What's going on, everybody? This is 86 here, back with some more Path of Exile 2 news, and they just recently released patch 0.10D. This is a patch I think that requires actual restart and download. I think they released this last night, December 11th, sometime around 8, I think, because I think that's the time I downloaded the patch. I'm just going to kind of go over the patch notes and just kind of what that means for us players. I think there was some nerfs coming in this patch, so a lot of people's our builds were nerfed. So there's been a lot of going around about people, needing respecs, and I kind of feel like if they're going to be like completely deleting people's builds, they should be offering like free respecs at this point, because they're really going to make a lot of people have a negative taste in their mouth about the game when they put all this time. It takes like quite a long time to get through the campaign and get to end game. So by the time you get your build all up and running and you're in end game and then they just delete it, it's not really good. It doesn't look good for the players. They should at least do something to help players fix their build. Free respecs would probably be good, at least especially if they're going to do heavy nerfs. Maybe not every patch they don't have to do that, but if they are going to be nerfing things significantly, they've got to do something to kind of ease players' minds and just, let them know that they understand that they nerfed their build, but they can do a free respec to at least get their build back up and running to maybe at least hopefully a playable state, because a lot of these builds just got gutted, I think, with the cast on chill or freeze and these cast on trigger builds. They've been a little too good so far. So let's go over the patch notes. Passive block chance now applies to blockable hits from all directions as opposed to just hits from the front. This is very good. It only being from the front, kind of a problem. I mean, when you build in a block as a defense, you want it to be not just a positional defense. They have the raised shield um, option. I haven't really played around with that much, but I'm sure that they could use that as some way for extra defense in the front. But yes, block should apply to every direction of your character. I feel like otherwise it just feels bad to invest in. So this is a good change. That's a buff. Player size is now set to 0 units while dodge rolling instead of 1 unit. So much easier to dodge roll through enemies. So this is a buff. Some smaller monsters can now be pushed while dodge rolling. This includes monsters such as adorned beetles of Keth. This is really good. It's a buff. You can push smaller monsters out of your way. You won't get body blocked as much. I know my first few days of gameplay, body blocking was a real problem, and it pissed me off quite a bit. Inscribe ultimatums and Dijin berets now display whether you will attain ascendancy skill points upon completing the Trial of Chaos or Trial of Sekhmas, respectively. This is really good because at least then you know beforehand if you will actually get your trials ascendancy points before working through these trials. Some of them can be a real pain in the ass, and people don't want to go all the way through this to just not get what they went in there for, which is their ascendancy points. It's like the single biggest increase in power. So yeah, that's a good change. That's a buff. Remove world map pins for encounters that were not from specific locations in areas, i.e. from monster drops. I don't know what that is, but that sounds like it's good. I don't really know monster map pins for encounters. I don't know. Improved attack in place behavior. That's a buff. Should just feel better when you're attacking in place. Rain of Arrows and Firestorm now have a hit rate limit to prevent cases of them absolutely obliterating very large bosses. This will have little to no impact outside of boss fights and very large hitboxes. So this is a nerf. Rain of Arrows. I was playing a build with that, and it hits an enormous amount of times. This probably wasn't intended for larger enemies, so this is a nerf. This will definitely affect Deadeyes who are using Rain of Arrows. They're probably using Rain of Arrows a lot for boss killing. So that's going to be a problem. Hopefully, there's some way for those builds to fix that or compensate. Leech has been buffed. That's a buff. I don't know by how much it's been buffed, but that's a buff. Bone Shatter now more reliably hits your target. That's a buff. I played around with Bone Shatter a little bit on my warrior. It felt really clunky to use. I do agree that it did not feel like it was connecting all the time. So this all around should make it feel better. I don't know if it'll become more viable, but it should feel better. The duration of armor break has been increased to 12 seconds, previously 6. That's a pretty big buff. That's like double the duration of armor break. To improve performance, Incinerate now creates circular arrows of igniting ground instead of segments. That's a buff to performance. Added control click shortcut to open the currency exchange at the appropriate NPCs. That's a buff, easier to access. Added a button to travel to the Trial of Chaos on the world map. That's cool. Sounds like a buff, easier to get to the Trial of Chaos. Added art for close combat support. That's cool. Added some art into the game. Added 2D art for Defiance and Destiny unique amulet. 2D art's always cool. Not really that impactful, but it's definitely cool. Added Ascendancy skill points as a keyword, which details how sets of ascending points are obtained. That's cool for the tutorial for newer players who are trying to figure things out. Information being readily available and not having to go to an external source, always a positive. Um, Added search functionality for gem cutting and vendor inventories when using a controller. Keybinds for searching stash on a controller have also been updated. That's a buff for me because I play with the controller. Right on. Added gem cutting restrictions for gamepad. I don't know what the hell that means. Oh, gem cutting restriction options for gamepad. Okay, that's cool. That's a buff. Added suggestion and supports for time of need. Um, suggested supports for time of need must be okay. Well, that's cool. Just little updates here and there to overall player experience. Have added an option for opening the trade website from the main menu for console. Oh wait, update the suggested supports for Bone Storm. That's good. Added an option for opening the trade website from the main menu for consoles. That's cool. Um, Runes now sell to vendors for more gold. Nice. It's always good to get more gold back. Updated art for reserve life and mana. Nice art buffs. Updated the description of runes to clarify that once socketed, they cannot be replaced. I mean, that's good. I already knew that. I really feel like you should be able to unsocket them. I kind of don't like that, but maybe that'll change in the future. Auras and curses that affect ally or enemy resistances now display values in the skill pop-out panel. That's pretty good. I mean, should be showing that anyways. Tweak the audio of the Kiwi Pets, Chimera Pet, and Baby Crowbell Pet to reduce their impact in town areas. That's good. Nobody likes a shitload of noise pollution. Updated the wording of the invokers and protect me from harm ascendancy passive still to clarify its functionality. That's good. That's a buff. More clarity on what the hell stuff's doing. Updated the description of Hex Blast to clarify that it only detonates a single curse per enemy in its radius. Updated the description on Fiery Death support to clarify that the support skill does not need to kill the ignited enemy itself. Reduce the enemy's defenses provided to monsters from Magabaria modifier. Walking Goliaths no longer use their suicide attack if they are rare. That's probably good because that was probably one shot in a lot of people. Trigger gems and energy drain. Okay, this is like the major nerf. Trigger gem energy drain was not in the right place and was far too easy to use ailments to trigger spells. One problem with the previous system is if we balance it to make triggering happen in boss fights, then the triggering would happen far too often during clearing. In order to address this, we are now making monster power part of the calculation for energy gain. This means that it's far easier to trigger skills from unique monsters than it is from normal monsters, but you also hit many more monsters when fighting. Another issue was using low level skills with unconditional ailment applications such as Flame Wall to ignite enemies for triggering. In order to make the source of ignite matter, we are making the energy gain dependent on the strength of the ignite. We have also rebalanced all energy gain across the board. So apparently this just was not functioning how they intended. Skills were being triggered way too easily and way too often. So now the energy that you gain, which is required to trigger said spells, is based on the difficulty of the enemy. So weaker enemies will give you way less energy. You'll be triggering them way less often. Uniques and harder enemies will give you more energy. So hopefully it kind of balances out. I don't know. I don't play those builds, so I don't really know how greatly they're impacted by this. But that's definitely a nerf. There should be a free respec with that. I don't know if they're gonna do that, but I really feel like that's needed for such a heavy nerf like that, especially if it's gonna completely destroy these builds. Ultimatum changes. I haven't messed around with ultimatum yet, but we'll just go over it really quick. Generally improved balance across the board with ultimatum monsters, bosses, and modifiers, mostly targeting the outliers that were too difficult and bringing them in line. So that's good. That's a buff for us players. Ultimatum should be just a little less rippy. The monster density of ultimatum encounters has been made more consistent. That's good. That's another buff. It shouldn't. Hopefully, that should stop you from getting too overwhelmed or just it being inconsistent. Sometimes getting a few monsters, sometimes getting a lot. Stormcaller runes, blood globules, heart tethers, and impending doom rings no longer spawn while a player is on a lift or near the altars in the Vol Soul core room. Fixed the bug where player minions could get stuck at the top of the lift in the Trial of Chaos. Right on. So those all sound like they're pretty good. Should just make Ultimatum more smooth, more enjoyable. Then these are all just bug fixes. I'm not gonna go over those. Um, I'll leave the patch notes in the description if anybody wants to go over that. This patch was released December 11th at like yesterday at about 8 o'clock. So main thing to get from this is trigger builds were nerfed. They introduced the dodge roll changes. Um, just like minor performance improvements and just quality of life changes. The biggest thing is the nerf to trigger builds. But now you can also dodge roll through enemies. It should make body blocking a little bit less of a problem overall. It sucks that they nerf stuff. Hopefully they'll address this and maybe give some free respecs or whatever. This is 86. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a good one. Peace.